Well, hello everybody, Roger here, and welcome to my channel, Roger's Reads. So today I'm going to do a book review of a book entitled The Miseducation of Cameron Post, written by Emily M. Danforth. So this book was on quite a few banned book lists, so no surprise, it immediately attracted my attention. So this story takes place in the early 1990s and follows a young lesbian teen named Cameron Post, whose parents are suddenly killed in a car crash. As it turns out, Cameron, who was 12 years old at the time, had been kissing a girl, her friend Irene, hours before her parents' death. So she ended up linking these two events in her thoughts, creating some major guilt. And in her pre-adolescent mind, wondered whether the death of her parents was God's way of punishing her for her forbidden kiss with Irene. And all this takes place right off the bat in the story. So Cam, she's then sent to live with her grandmother and her ultra-conservative and ultra-religious Aunt Ruth in Miles City, Montana. So you can guess where this is going to go. So as Cameron steps into her teenage years, she comes to accept that she's a lesbian and makes another gay friend, Lindsay. Well, it was more like a friends with benefits type of situation. And Lindsay ends up teaching her the ropes and refers to Cam as a baby dyke, which always gave me a bit of a chuckle. So I thought that this was going to be a sort of a coming-of-age tale of a young lesbian girl trying to figure out who she is. But then the story takes quite a surprising and disturbing turn. Cameron is outed to her Aunt Ruth, and as a result, things don't end up too well for our heroine, as Aunt Ruth decides to take drastic action, intent on fixing her niece. So she sends Cameron to God's Promise Church Camp, which is one of those pray away the gay type of compounds, which really give me the creeps. So anyway, our story gets quite interesting from there. So on to what I liked about this story. I absolutely loved the character of Cameron, as she was quite the firecracker. One author's blurb in the back of the book said that if Holden Caulfield had been a gay girl from Montana, this is a story he might have told. And I definitely have to agree, given that I just read Catcher in the Rye, and Holden Caulfield is still fresh in my mind. Like Holden, Cameron is so realistically portrayed that she jumped off the pages and felt real to me as I read about her adventures and her misadventures. So, though she did have somewhat of a strong ego and independent streak, it was these qualities which allowed her to reject the judgment of those in authority figures and maintain her self-esteem through all of the horrible things that she went through. This was especially true when she realized that often the people who are supposedly in charge really don't have a clue about what they're doing, and they're just winging it as they're going along. So now while Cameron can certainly be snarky at times, she's also intelligent, strong, and surprisingly adaptable and brave. And she's able to maneuver through any shitstorm that comes her way. You know, there's really so much to like about this story. I love the vivid, detailed descriptions. The author really brought the location to life. The storyline was also gripping with wonderfully snappy dialogue and unique characters that were not cliches or cardboard cutouts, with all of this leading to a marvelously well-done story. And speaking of the characters, I also enjoyed the varied cast of secondary characters, most of which were nicely developed and each relevant in their own way to the plot. Now, to the author's credit, she doesn't portray the Christians in this story as mean-spirited, hateful bigots. In fact, there really weren't any real villains in the story per se. The counselors like Rick and Lydia, and even Cameron's Aunt Ruth, all felt that they were doing the right thing and believed that what they were doing was ultimately in Cameron's best interest, though I do have to say that I despised Aunt Ruth. Still, In general, I have a difficult time reading stories about these gay conversion therapy camps whose goal it is to cure teen girls and boys of homosexuality. Thankfully, this type of therapy is now seen as a form of child abuse these days, and these types of institutions are on the decline, at least to my understanding. So, on to what I didn't like about the story. I did feel that the book was a little on the long side. I remember thinking a couple of times while reading, this book is really dragging. So in this way, it could have used a little snipping here and there. I also was not really a fan of the ending. If you're one of those folks who likes things neatly tied up at the end, you're going to be a little bit disappointed with this. In fact, I found the ending rather abrupt. Now, it's not that it ended on a cliffhanger or anything like that. There just didn't seem to be a lot of resolution at the story's finale. For instance, I would have loved to have learned how Cam got on about 6 months down the road. I also would have loved to see what Cam's future relationship was like with her Aunt Ruth, her grandma, even Coley, and how it developed down the road. I think a nice little epilogue of 20 pages or so would have been lovely, and maybe give a little glimpse into Cam's future. As I've mentioned previously on this channel, I'm a little bit of a closure junkie, so a little more resolution would have been nice. I also should mention that though this is classified as a young adult novel, there is drinking, drug abuse, shoplifting, and blatant sexual situations, elements which some people might not like to see in their young adult books. So on to my final verdict. This book was quite an emotional roller coaster ride, and there were some dark moments in the story that are a little bit challenging to get through. Your heart can't help but break at times for Cam as she struggled to make the best out of a bad situation. There's a character in the book, Mark, also, whose story is quite disturbing and heart-wrenching. So keeping that in mind, this isn't a fluffy YA book at all. Rather, it deals with some serious topics such as betrayal, love, loss, self-acceptance, religion, and sexual confusion. But the courage and adaptability that Cam shows throughout the novel is really commendable. Now, I don't mean to imply that this is a grim story, because it's really not. It definitely has its fun, light, and humorous elements as well. In fact, there are many times that I laughed out loud while reading this story. So, in summary, I absolutely loved this book. And while it was heartbreaking in places, it was also a beautiful coming-of-age story with a riveting plot, a strong narrative, and compelling, well-fleshed-out characters, especially Cameron, whom I bonded with right from the get-go. This really was an amazing novel, and I am so glad that it crossed my path, though it did leave me wanting a little bit more at the end of it. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars. And that is it for the Miseducation of Cameron Post. Have you read this book? What'd you think? Let me know in the comments. And that is it for this time. As always, I thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support. And I will talk to you in the next video. Bye-bye.